Welcome to episode 3 of the Sense International Changemakers podcast. In this episode, I spoke to Faith Nyaboke, Program Officer, Early Intervention, Mellen Marucha, Senior Programs Coordinator, and Daniel Musango, Country Program Lead, all from our team in Kenya. The conversation began with a catch-up about how 2026 has started for them and what's in the pipeline and mission for this year. So we're recording this episode in January 2026, and I just wanted to start by asking, how has 2026 started for you all in Sense International Kenya? And let's start with you, Mellen and Faith. How's the year started for you?
Okay, 2026 it is, and personally, I had some goals. I had started my studies, and I'm looking forward to finishing my studies this year and graduating. That's on a personal level. And coming to Sense International work, I'm really excited about 2 new projects that we are starting this year. On early intervention and inclusive education, and one very unique one that is combining the two. We've never had a project that combines early intervention together with inclusive education since I joined Sense International Kenya. So this will be a very great opportunity, and I'm looking forward to that new project. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, and Faith, how about yourself?
Personally, I would say this year started on a very high note. And of course, I have my vision board, and I'm really looking at having a very exciting year. I'm very positive about it. When it comes to Sense International and the work that you're doing, we're really keen on the early intervention aspect and really enhancing our ear screening services and the audiological services and support system itself, and looking at the best way forwards to making sure that we're now integrating eye health care into now our early intervention. Putting a strategic focus into that is what I'm really looking forward to. And of course, with what Mellen is talking about, the new projects that are coming to start this year.
Excellent. It sounds like there's plenty of plans happening there. And Daniel, how about yourself? And if you could weave in a little bit of about Sense International Kenya's mission as well into to your year.
Thank you, Adam. 2026 is starting with a blast. 2025 ended well at the same note as well. And as we go into 2026, yes, we are still looking at pushing on with our mission, supporting people with complex disabilities, people with deafblindness through the life cycle approach, starting with the early identification and intervention, going into inclusive education and into vocational training and livelihoods. But also key for us in 2026, we are already starting the process of renewing our strategy. Actually, we are looking at this at more global level, Sense International, and then narrowing down to Sense International Kenya, because our current strategy is expiring in 2027. So we want to have a new one by then. And as we look at this strategy, we are also looking at where we want to go, because where we want to be as Sense International Kenya, because the development world is really evolving. And as the wheel turns, we have to turn with it. So looking at probably some new programmatic areas, looking at new innovations. If you look at, for example, the institutional funding basket has been dwindling day by day. Some time back, we had the UK aid funding, we had the UK UCAM, UK the UK aid match funding, the deed, FCDO funding, all these are dwindling. So we are now back to looking at in-country fundraising, and that's a key focus for us in 2026. Talking about programming, we want to be a little bit innovative as well, because currently we've been implementing programs in early intervention, inclusive education, livelihoods, vocational training, but now we are venturing into unpaid care for caregivers of children with disabilities. Actually, right now, we are actually already in some talks with UNICEF and the Kenya Association of Intellectually Handicapped to implement a joint program. Sports and disability, that is an area we've been sitting at the fence on. So we're really looking at to see what we can do in that regard. Talking about disability and climate change, sexual and reproductive health, disability and nutrition, quite a number of areas. It's all about being able to go out there, innovate, and make sure that you stand out amongst the other peers. That's how we make sure that we keep on being the top deliverer of services to people with complex disabilities in Kenya. Thank
That's
you,
great
Adam.
to hear. You're welcome. It's great to hear that you're finding those new ways to engage with the country, and also the fundraisers, because as you're saying that some of the funding is dwindling, but it sounds like you're being innovative and finding those new ways to get into sport, to engage environment and food and all those kinds of initiatives, which is fantastic to hear. And I hear that Sense International's early intervention program, which identifies and supports children with deaf blindness, is doing amazing work. Faith, can you tell us a bit more about the program and how it's set up, please?
Yeah, I'm really excited about early intervention because this is the program has been almost non-existent in our government hospitals within the country. We're not saying that it's not been there because private hospitals try to do this, but at a very high fee. So having this service in government hospital has always been a limitation, and the larger population within our country do depend on government facilities for health services. So within this programming, we're looking at 2 steps of early intervention or screening or identification of children with disabilities, whereby we are doing community-based type of screening and we are doing hospital-based equipment screening. So from the community-based, we are using the community health promoters, or what we used to call community health volunteers, to do the first stage risk factor questionnaire. This is just asking questions about any possibilities within the household of children having disability, whether they've had a screening before, and giving them a training on what disability risk markers are. And once they are able to identify, they are referred into the hospital for the second stage, or what you're calling the equipment screening. So the whole cycle is a 2-stage type of screening itself. So within the hospital, they do receive the equipment screening for hear loss and visual loss, and then also the rate of development. And then they are now enrolled into the early intervention units, where we do have an occupational therapist that does provide sensory integration, rate of development type of therapy, oral therapy stimulation, all these types of therapies to support the children who've been identified to have a level of complexities or multiple types of disabilities. So we're doing this project in 2 counties within the country, that is Kwale and Garissa, which is really farther apart. And these are counties, or which would say that in most cases when it comes to service provision, are more forgotten when it comes to the resource allocation also, and whether it comes to the roads, whether it comes to the infrastructure, they're really quote unquote a poor county, let me say, because of the level of economy that also people do, the residents are at in the specific counties. You would find that when it comes to context of Garissa, this is whereby people travel over 200 kilometers to get healthcare services. So this, I'm just trying to give a context of how the different parts of the project implementation is happening. In Kwale County, this is a coastal area with tourism, but when it comes to the health, there's a little bit of challenge, and this has not been happening. So we've been able to screen in 2021 to 2023. We were able to screen approximately 84,000 children for ear, visual, and rate of development difficulties, and we were able to enroll around 147 children into early intervention. These are children with complex disabilities. Those with single sensory impairments were being referred for other support services, whether it is eye care, whether it is issues with wax, they were being sent to the ENT departments. From there, we had a lot of conversations when it comes to sustainability, because this is a pilot project. So from the beginning, we had conversations with the county health management teams, the CECs, to look at making sure that once we leave, the project becomes sustainable. So we had an MOU which ensure that by the end of the project, they are able to take up the occupational therapist within the facilities. We were also able, within this programming, we are also giving out assistive devices. In as much as we are doing therapy, we do know that assistive devices are also part of the therapy services itself. So parents received assistive devices for their children. They received tablets, which was being used to train them on home-based types of therapies. What are they to do at home? Because then again, time is limited. We do know that for therapy to work, it's recommended 25 plus hours a week. But then again, remember, I've talked about the distance, the resources that the parent has to incur to get into the therapy services. So they're using these tablets from home to now learn and be able to do these therapeutic services or interventions from home. And then they are visited by the occupational therapist to be able to, guide them on home adaptations and the proper ways of doing these therapies itself. So we're looking at a multisectoral ways of approach of looking at early intervention, getting the government buy-in, making sure that the areas that we are working towards are the hard to reach areas. And we're looking at having these rolled out into other, other hospitals and other entities. That would be a success for us, seeing that, the government has been taking this service and rolled out to other. We have 47 counties in the country. So if this happens, that will be a very huge success for us.
That would be a huge success, especially getting the support and the backing of the government to roll this plan out to, as you say, further services. And it'll be great to see that later and see that success actually taking place. And Mellen, I just wanted to ask you about the work to support children with deaf blindness and complex disabilities in school through your inclusive education projects. Can you talk to us a bit about that and what that involves?
Yes, definitely when you talk about inclusive education, everybody looks at Mellen, and I feel proud talking about inclusive education anytime. So at Sense International Kenya, we approach it in two ways. We have home-based education and we have school-based education. So looking at home-based education, there are those learners with complex disabilities who have, or maybe to give the Kenyan context, education begins from 4 years old. When you're 4 years old, you're expected to go to school. But now for learners who have complex disabilities, they have attained the age, school-going age, but they're not able to still go to school and comprehend, or even they've not yet acquired the school readiness skills. So they're enrolled into the home-based education system, where we have learner support assistants who work with them through their education, teaching them activities of daily living, just as a way of preparing them to eventually transit into school-based education. Definitely there are those who are able to transit into mainstream education at mainstream schools, but there are those who, because of the severity of their disabilities, they're not able to go into school-based, and they actually now they stay in home-based education for a while. So coming to school-based education, the learners, once they transit from home to school, definitely they will still meet learner support assistants who will work with them through the early years, as the classroom teachers now take up the responsibility of educating them going forward, because currently at the education system, the learner support assistants are not yet employed by the government. But now through Sense International Kenya, first I have to appreciate that Sense International Kenya was the pioneer of learner support assistance system in Kenya. It is, of course, being practiced in other parts of the world, but in Kenya, through Sense International Kenya, we were able to ensure that the learner support assistants were incorporated into the sector policy for learners and trainees with disabilities. This is a government policy which talks about the do's and the don'ts for trainees and learners with disabilities, and it was enacted in the year 2018. So Sense International had a very big role in participating in this policy, which is currently under review. And then Sense International, again, together with the education body called Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, developed a curriculum for training the learner support assistants. Because now when we told the government that we need learner support assistants, the gap was, which curriculum do we use to train them, or who are they? So through Sense International, again, we supported now the curriculum development body to come up with the curriculum. And then again, we merged together with a training institution, which trains all teachers with all teachers in the special needs education sector. We partnered with the Kenya Institute of Special Education to train the first lot of learner support assistants, 100 of them actually, who are trained on school-based support as a learner support assistant. So currently the course is being offered by KISE, Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. And yes, there are enrollments are going on, not only through the sponsorship of Sense, but also through other avenues. Other organizations also sponsor some students to learn at Kenya Institute of Special Education. So coming back to policy again, so Sense International supported in the development of the sector policy, where it talks about the learner support assistance. Again, Sense International still influenced the learner support assistance cadre to be recognized in the sector, National Education Sector Strategic Plan. This is a 5-year document that outlines the roadmap for the Ministry of Education. So all through the years since 2018, Sense International has been working together with the Ministry of Education. And finally, the last one, the last sector policy was able to recognize that learner support assistants are needed in schools to support children with complex disabilities through their learning. And once the government recognizes them in such policy documents, then they are obliged to start allocating them into schools. So we've not yet gotten there, but we are hoping that with time, with our effort as Sense International Kenya, we are going to achieve that particular step with the Ministry of Education. So what we are hoping to see through the Ministry of Education is that the learner support assistants be recognized first, and then they be posted in schools, all schools, because we do not want them to be posted to only schools that have children with disabilities. We want every school to be ready to receive a learner with a disability. Like a case that I will not mention the name of the school. Currently in Kenya, students are being admitted to grade 10. This is like senior secondary school. And there's a school that has been marked to having sent away a learner because he has a disability. So what if the government takes up all the teachers and trains them on inclusive education, such that even if a learner with a disability gets admitted into any school, then there is a teacher ready to handle that particular learner. So that is what we are hoping for in the Ministry of Education and in the education sector in Kenya.
That's great to hear how influential you and your team at Sense International are in changing the policy and influencing policy. And I really hope that you can get into more and more schools over time. And that's interesting because that also came up in the podcast that we recorded with Peru. They're also doing something similar where they're hoping to get into more schools and make them inclusive ready to receive children with complex needs, complex disabilities, deafblindness. And it was really heartwarming to hear from them that the teachers and the pupils were ready, so that when they did have a child who came in with blindness, they were ready, and they were all the children were really supportive of their new classmate. And I can almost imagine that happening. I can imagine that happening in Kenya when the schools adopt that policy into their thinking, which is
Definitely.
really beautiful to hear. And I can't wait to hear more about that a bit later. And continue on that theme of projects and initiatives. And Daniel, I just wanted to talk to you a bit more about Sense International Kenya winning the Zero Project Award for In Business program. Can you tell us a bit about the program and what it felt like to win the award and what it meant to Sense International?
That was quite a remarkable achievement, and the project that gave us this award was our In Business project, which was supporting micro entrepreneurs with complex disabilities, and it's one of the projects that has really given us some really good outcomes. being able to support young people who are running some businesses, and then being able to boost those and see how they are magnifying their sales and their output. So that was quite a big one. And yeah, we've been following up on the awards for 2026, because now we become like a family, and we hope that we'll keep on getting these awards as we move on.
Uh, Great. That's fantastic, and congratulations to you all for winning that award. And speaking of awards, Mellen, you won the Sense Award for Outstanding Contribution to International Development at our ceremony last year, and it was really great to see you on the video there accepting your award. Can you tell us what that meant to you, getting the award?
Wow, this moment always sticks in my memory. When my name was read out, I couldn't believe that it was Mellen who was the winner. But then really, the whole thing made me feel like Sense International is able to recognize the work I do, Sense International is able to appreciate the work that I do, and that the advocacy efforts in the boardrooms, running through the Ministry of Education, running to the training, KISE, Kenya Institute of Special Education, running to Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, all for children with complex disabilities, were all appreciated and recognized. So it was really a huge thing. And I believe that in the sector, people now could see that people are working towards children with complex disabilities, and the efforts are being seen. So yeah, it was a great moment for me, and I appreciate Sense International and my colleagues for selecting and for nominating me. Definitely.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was beautiful, a beautiful moment to see that on the award ceremony last year, and well done again for getting that. And
thank you.
So, Faith, could you talk to us a little bit more about Sense International Kenya's audiology program? It'd be great to hear more about that.
Yeah, it's one of the programs that we're really proud of and really love. And I think we've learned so much from the project itself. The project is providing audiological services. This is the first time that we are having these services in a public hospital, again, in the country. This is happening in Kwale, whereby we've set up the full audiological services within the hospital itself. We are having these being in a government hospital, as I had earlier said, that by providing these in government facilities, that is where we are having a large influx of people, children going in for health support needs. So we are able to now do screening. We are doing diagnostics and fitting of hearing aids and aftercare services to the support of Hear the World Foundation. And we are going to have the first ear mold lab again in a public hospitals within the project itself. So we're screening children from the ages of 0 to 18 years for both for hearing loss, and those who are found to be having hearing challenges are able to get their hearing aids fitting. And we know the importance of early intervention by the aspect that if a child gets a hearing aid earlier, they're able to go for speech therapy and you maybe use their residual hearing and be able to have some level of speech. For those who have total hearing loss, are able to get to learn sign language earlier, therefore changing the impact of their life, the trajectory of their education life, and subsequently to their adult life. So what we're looking at is having within the project, we are screening from either school-based, we are doing these in places of worship, we are doing these within the community, with the support of the community health promoters, the screeners who are health clinicians within the hospital, and we are having the government supporting us, the county government supporting us in the whole processes. We are seeing them as part of our steering committee, and even in these conversations within the doors, having a talk about what you're able to do. It's really interesting to see how parents, I remember we met one child who had never, was gradually losing their hearing, but by them having a hearing aid, they're no longer removing it. They're enjoying playing with the other children. They're playing football, they're running around. So it's something that you really celebrate when you see these happening. So what we're looking at, making sure within this early intervention of hearing loss, and I know that conversations even with WHO is there on making sure that ear and hearing care is a priority when it comes to every other individual, seeing that we want to make sure that as Sense International, we are now able to provide comprehensive intervention for our children. We've done a focus on ear health, ear and hearing health, and now we want to look at eye health and making sure that our eye health intervention becomes very comprehensive. As we talked earlier about early interventions, we've been using a lot of occupational therapy, but we want to look at a multidisciplinary approach of making sure that interventions are provided to the child. Mellen talked about a time that we're now going to have early intervention and inclusive education linked together in a project, therefore having a multidisciplinary way of looking at a child, both health-wise and education-wise, to make sure that the solutions that we provide are very comprehensive, and this is a child that is able to, attain the best possibility of their life. And of course, a celebration would be looking at government still being able to replicate the services within their facilities, even if it is maybe, within sub-counties or different grouping counties, and being able to do this service itself, because it's not easy, but by the decision to now take this up, it shows that we are giving a priority to our ear health and eye health also. Thank you.
That's really interesting to hear about the working within the schools for early intervention. So you're securing brighter futures for those children and young people, and helping them communicate and actually get into education and be able to socialize and take part in society and the communities. And it's great to hear that you're getting the backing of the communities too, through the places of worship, as you mentioned, and also all the way up to government. Again, they are backing what you're doing, which is really, really encouraging to hear. Really encouraging.
To add on that, in Kwale County, they did have an audiologist. Our whole county didn't have an audiologist, and we've been able to get an audiologist to provide all these services. And we're looking at the county now being able to employ the audiologist. So I'm just trying to add on the fact that there was a very huge gap, but now the project is really is able to now shorten the gap that has been there.
Great. That's fantastic. Thank you for letting us know that. That's great. So as we bring the episode to a close, there's some clear themes coming out here, isn't there? We're talking about early interventions, talking about policy and being influential in the spaces in Kenya. And I just wanted to finalize the episode with a question to you all, which is, if there was a moment in the last 5 years that stood out to you, or between 3 and 5 years, that really stood out to you as a moment of that will last in your memory. Daniel, can you tell us if you have a moment like that took place in the last 5 years?
Yes, I can. I think for me, that moment was back in 2023. When the opportunity to apply for the Hear the Word of Foundation opportunity came up, and then we had a big debate on whether focusing on hearing care only is part of our mandate. But then we said, anyway, let's go into it and see how we can still do some bits of complex disabilities in there. But then now going into the work itself, we start realizing, oh, now we are doing some very comprehensive work in ear care. What about eye care? So what we thought was each of 50 we are not so sure about came around and taught us some great lessons in that we need to have more comprehensive services in all the domains that we do, including ear care, eye care, and other intervention services. I think that was the key moment for me. And of course, the Zero Project Awards last year. Mellen, in case you wanted to mention that one, sorry, it's taken up. That was a great one for me. Thank you.
And Mellen, same question to you.
Okay, actually, Daniel has mentioned the highlight for me, the Zero Project Award, but still I can talk about it because I remember when the application came through, one of our UK staff was like, we can apply for this, but we were not sure. we were really not sure that we could win such. So we didn't give it much thought. We just did the application shallowly. But surprisingly, when we were nominated, we did not believe that really, yes. So the outcome of it was superb, because now it gave us global presence. And the project that I was leading, that is the In Business project, also now became famous globally, because it was only being implemented in Kenya. And the other highlight I could also mention is that when the learner support assistants first graduated, it also gave us a lot of publicity that, yes, you are the ones who introduced that particular cadre into Kenya, and we have supported them through the training up to the graduation level. So that was also another very key highlight for me. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Faith?
I think combining to the highlights that have been really mentioned, for me, the highlight usually is when I see our children. I usually say our children because I don't know, for some reason, yeah, our children acquiring milestones, whether education wise, whether in therapy, in these interventions, seeing the parents, the change of attitude when it comes to conversations around disability, looking at county governments buy-in, the employability of the people that we're talking about, the audiologists, the occupational therapists, them seeing that there is need, accepting it, and really taking a lead in the process is usually a highlight for me. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much for sharing your stories and the work that you're doing. And it's joyful and hopeful to see that new futures, new pathways are being created by yourselves in the work that you do, in the interventions in schools, those joyful moments where you see a child here for the first time and the parent, I'm assuming here, seeing their child thrive, that's quite remarkable. And I'd just like to say thank you all so much for sharing the work that you've done with us today. And that's the end of the episode. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you too.
Thank you to Faith, Mellen and Daniel for speaking to me today and sharing their stories about their vital work. Hearing about early screening and intervention services and how these initiatives shape children's long-term outcomes in education, communication and participation in society has been particularly great to hear. Much like our previous episodes, the Kenya team is working hard towards systemic policy change by influencing and working in partnership with their government. It was great to hear about the innovation in disability inclusion, particularly audiology in hospitals, inclusive education, and being recognised through the Zero Project Award.